All right, so what are we talking about today then?
Event handlers and listeners.
Event handlers and listeners? Yeah, I chose to do it in React, and then that transfers over fairly easily if you just wanted to do it in a plain old HTML JavaScript file. Yeah, things will be very, very similar. We'll talk briefly about the differences as well. Cool. So, how many ways traditionally could we add event handlers? Or do you know of any ways to add event handlers? No? Say again? I said, do you know of any ways to add event handlers or listeners? Document.add event listener, that would be one, definitely. Yeah. Any other ways? Okay, so you're talking about an on-click event. Where would you put that on-click event? You said in HTML.
Yeah. So for instance, if it's in a tag, in a button,
Yeah.
I'll put it as an attribute.
Yep.
And
So
then I'll pass a function.
absolutely. So as a HTML attribute as well. So that's what we call inline. Yeah. So we can refer to our events inline, and you'll often in React see that way done as well. Under the hood, it's doing something slightly different to the traditional inline method, because the inline method's been available since I think the very first event spec, and really, really old versions of browsers sort of go back to Netscape history and stuff like that. But yeah, you'll see a familiar sort of inline syntax used in React quite a bit, and I think that's the way we've all been adding them so far whenever we've used an event handler. I suppose we should maybe just go back one step, and what do we actually mean by events, right? Yeah. So, yeah, essentially that, something that happens on the page. Yeah, I mean, I think to be very general like that, to just say something is actually really a really good definition in this case, because it's just how we add some interactivity to our pages. Yeah, JavaScript is often built on this interactivity model. So within the browser, there's lots of events that can be triggered, and therefore we can listen for those events and react when they happen, and create a function to do something when they happen. If you go to MDM, there's a huge list of events, and look, I don't expect you to know many of them at all, but just look at all these different types. We've got network events, focus events, WebSocket events, session history, animation, blah, blah, blah. Form events, right? You'll probably be working with forms later on in the week in your team apps. Print event, yeah, there's so many, yeah? We're probably most familiar with things like the keyboard events and the mouse events. Yeah, so things like key up, key down, form events, maybe on submit, things like that. When you submit a form, we have a form handler. Mouse events, click, there's a double click one, mouse over, all these sorts of things. Yeah, so network events, yeah, I think I said that right at the start. It was on the starter list, but there are network events, definitely. There's now drag and drop events, since we had the drag and drop functionality be introduced, and obviously quite important for mobile as well, drag and drop events. So the point is, there's lots, right? There's lots. But the way we handle them is similar for all of them, yeah? The syntax and how we write event listeners and event handlers is similar for every single event. The events themselves will do different things. They have different default behaviors, but how we add an extra custom handler onto that is the same across almost all events, yeah? So, we've already talked about 2 ways to add events. There's actually a third way. Anyone know what that third way is? So we said inline within the actual tag, and we've said add event listener as well. There's a third way also. No, maybe we'll come to that then when we go through some examples. Again, I've just set up a very, very basic layout here. Oh, I shouldn't have hovered over things yet. Sorry, we've got some events triggering already. Let's just refresh it. So, yeah, essentially there, I've just got an outer box, an inner box, and an innermost box. Yeah, hopefully that's still clear. And the idea being that we can, through the course of this session, add some events to them. Yeah. So, the first event, maybe because it's the most familiar to most people, is the on-click event. Yeah. So let's just add an on-click event to this outer box. Let's do it the way we're probably most familiar with, which is via React. And if we can see my outer box here, I've just done them all as buttons. Just help with the layout so I didn't have to style it. Basically, I'm lazy. So, how would we then add an event listener to this button?
By getting it by ID, basically.
By getting it by ID.
I know, actually, we are in React.
So,
No, we went
yeah, we don't even really need to do that, right? Because inline in React, we've got things like on-click, on-mouse over, all these attributes already that we can just add on to our JSX elements, yeah? So, in the case of a click event, which is, I think we'll start there, what is the attribute name for that? On-click, yeah? So it's not click, it's actually on-click, yeah? We need the on when we're using attributes. We'll see some cases where we don't need the on, depending on how we define our event listeners. So, is it on-click like that? Oh, it's got a big hint there, right? When I typed it on YouTube, it's coming up. So I typed it all lowercase, and it automatically suggested the uppercase version for me, yeah? So because we're in React, the case does matter. It must be camel case. If we're in HTML, it's not case sensitive, so we're okay with that. But because we're in React, let's make it a camel case on-click event. And then what do we do next? Okay, so we're putting some JavaScript here, yeah. And we're in a class, by the way. We're in a class component, class-based component. So I need to do what, sorry? Just, what's my next line of code? What's my next thing to type? Call a function? So, what, an arrow function like that or something?
Great. Class? No. It has to be class name.
Class name, indeed, yeah.
Or we can use it.
Yeah. I was lazy with the styles, so I didn't end up using them, but you're correct.
We're going to give the name of the handle function.
Yeah, so I'm going to call it handle click, right? Just to.
These handle click because of the class.
I'll actually just call it handle attribute click for now, yeah? Okay.
Give dot, no?
And, yep, why is it complaining? That was my next question. What needs to go in parentheses? Sorry.
If handle is a function, do not need parentheses at the end.
You mean like that? Hasn't fixed the issue though, has it?
These.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're in a class component, so we need the keyword this. Okay. And then let's actually write that event handler then. So up here, I can do handle attribute click, handle attribute click. And what do we want to do inside of there? Up to you. Make it do something. Be creative. What do you want it to do? That box. Change the color. Okay. Change the color of the text or change the background color? Background color. So how would I do that? So this dot. Why are we putting anything in the state? Do we need to put anything in the state? Not really. We haven't initialized anything.
Document.inline
Okay, so you could do document.get element by ID, blah 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 blah. Yeah.
Another style.
How about if we passed in the actual event parameter itself? Could we use that?
Right, that's a good question because
You are not passing it on the click event.
So is E our ID? C?
E stands for event. So automatically, when we have a event here that is triggered, then we get an event object passed to our handler, which is what this E stands for in this case. I mean, I can call it event if that helps. It doesn't actually matter what we call it, yeah? So let's say we get that event passed to it. Why am I getting a little issue here? Pass near unexpected token. Is that because I haven't closed something up above? Yes. Okay, so let's just actually see what happens now, and let's have a look at this event object, see what it contains, yeah?
It's complaining about something.
No, I'll fix that now, okay? I think just your delay.
You are not passing the events, no? The click,
Let's see, Walter, let's see.
like that.
So this should be attached to the outer box, yeah, the outer box. So if I save that, failed to compile, so you're right, it is still complaining about something. Render.
Is expecting a semicolon
Here, this one?
on line 29. Instead of a curly brace, it was expecting a semicolon from line 29.
Yeah, I mean, the semicolon's not going to break it, but yeah, that's fine. I just had an extra curly brace closing here. No worries, no worries. Right, so let's open the console so we can have a look. Okay, that's because I got nested buttons. Yeah, okay, naughty, but never mind. So if I click on the outer box here, we should get something, right? If we set up our event handler correctly. So I'm going to click now. Undefined. Okay. So what did Walter say? He said we needed to pass the event there.
To the on click, yeah, there, and also the arrow function.
I thought we could call that anything we wanted, but I don't think that's going to make a difference.
No, the arrow function.
Oh, in the arrow function. Yeah, see, we're not allowed to do it there, but you're saying that. Yep. Okay, cool. So now we've got an event object, which has a lot of properties, yeah?
so is that the event object?
That's the event
famous
object.
event
The
object.
famous obscure event object that appears out of nowhere, that is just automatically passed to our...
It's one of those things that
So,
this propagation stuff. It's a good place.
maybe we'll look at is propagation stopped later, Nico.
Is
But
default prevented.
we'll definitely look at is default prevented. That's easier to explain. But anyway, there's a few properties in here, right? So, let's have a look at some of them. Ones that we commonly tend to use. I can't even see target on there. I think see current target. But, oh yeah, there's target. Yeah, target and type. Okay. So if rather than looking at the whole object, let's just look at a few little properties. So if we look at event target and we look at type, what else do you want to look at, Wendy? No? Nothing? Oh, there's that one, type. Okay. Cool. Well, let's just look at those two and see what it returns. So, our first one we had let me just clear that again, sorry. Our first one we had was the actual element itself. Yeah?
Target.
So that's the target. E.target is the button. And in this case, it's the button that we clicked on. Yeah? The outermost one. You can see it highlighted on the right. And E.type is giving us the type of event that we initiated. Yeah? So this, in this case, a click event. So it can be useful just to see what's going on, and the event.target is very useful itself. So yes, we could have done get element by ID, blah blah blah, all that stuff to make sure we're selecting the correct element in the console, but when we've initialized an event from a certain tag or a certain element like this, in our case this button with an ID of C, that information has already got passed to the event object, so it's available for us to use. So instead, if we want to add some behavior to it, we can just type E.target, and then we want to change the background color, right? Does anyone know how to change the background color then using it in this way, doing it in this way? There's a clue in the pop-up box. Yeah, you've seen it, yeah? Style. So we can change the style, and then we want to change what style? Background. So you can just literally chain it on like this.
Background pink.
And we've got a suggestion from Walter for background pink.
Very sexy.
I disagree.
Walter says very sexy, Bouquet says no. So what's going to happen now when we click? Oh, it did change. It wasn't a good... We're going to have a darker colour, I think, because you can barely see that on the screen or even on YouTube. So it did change, but... dark red. Have we got dark red? Is that a colour? I don't know. Let's find out. Nope, that one doesn't exist. Purple. Where am I going? I'm going back here. Purple, yeah. Awesome. Click. Purple. Yeah, so we successfully changed it via an on-click event. This is, all right, the pink would have been sexier, but we couldn't see it very well, so we'll go with the purple for now. Yeah, so you can clearly see then that we've changed that. Okay, so what do we have there? We had an inline way of adding an event and defining a handler, which we can, within it, we can write whatever we please. And the E.target can come in very handy to make sure that we apply it to that correct element that has initiated the event, yeah? Okay. Step one, should we work with some of the other boxes? And this time...
Sorry.
Here, go on, let's go back, yep.
E-target style back.
Yep.
So style.
So maybe we open DevTools and just see what's happening.
Selector are we targeting?
Which selector are we targeting?
Both.
No, we're targeting
Oh, sorry.
E.target,
The button, yeah,
which in this case is the button.
It's a button.
Yep. So if we actually, I've triggered all my other events now, look at that. So if we actually look here, we got this back, didn't we? We got button ID, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And can you now see that it's got a style on it, a style attribute on it with a background purple? If we refresh that page and look at the same button, it doesn't have that background attribute added to it, that style attribute added to it, yeah?
Just create it from scratch.
We create it from scratch by clicking. There it goes. Style, background, purple. Yeah, so that's what the event handler in this case is doing because we told it to. But of course we could do tons of different things with it. It's up to your imagination really and your knowledge of the language as to what you can do with it. The event itself is just listening and triggering some behavior. That behavior is totally up to you. Yeah. Cool. So that was an inline on-click event in React. Let's have a look at some other transferable ways. So the other two ways are something called the DOM property and then the level 2 DOM method. So the level 2 DOM method is just the add event listener that we had earlier. But let's look at the other way first. So this is another older way to do it. And that is doing it like this. So in React, typically we would create our event listeners within the component did mount. Does anyone know why this is a good practice and to not do it before that?
We know about the randomness, right?
Because we know that the render's worked, and what does the render do?
Display.
Presents, displays, draws the DOM, right? So if we try and find an element in the DOM before the render is run, then it possibly won't be able to, well, it won't be able to find that element. So we're just going to get a null value returned. So we need to let the DOM draw first, the render run first, and then we can reference our elements and assign them to variables. Otherwise, we'd just be assigning a variable with the value of null. Yeah, it wouldn't be able to find document.getElementID, get element by ID A, because it doesn't exist yet. Yeah, we haven't run the render. So we need to run the render first and then create our event listeners inside component did mount. Does that make sense? Awesome. So we get rid of the add event listener ones for now, and we'll visit those later. So I'm just going to comment them out for now.
Is actually an event listener, is it actually using the React?
We can do, yeah, absolutely. You can use all three methods.
Is it common practice?
Is it common practice? I don't think so. In the documentation, they seem to recommend more the inline style that we've just done there. But this is the most widely supported way. The add event listener way is the most widely supported. And there's certain types of events that only work with add event listener. They won't work with the inline style. So add event listener is universal, more powerful. It's the most modern method. React, I guess, because it works with JSX, has chosen to do the inline style because that's its philosophy, I guess. But yeah, that's why we would use add event listener sometimes over the inline style. Yeah, I just want to make you aware of the other way as well, which is there's another reason why we'd use add event listener. I'll come to that as well. So the other way is what I call a DOM property. Yeah, so you can see that we retrieve a certain element. So yeah, let's go for the inner box. So the inner box is, well, the inner box, right? The one I've called inner on our application. And we can actually just directly assign a property to it. And this property must be the name of a recognized event. So on mouse out, let's go on mouse over because it's a bit easier to explain. On mouse over. So that's a recognized event in the browser. And that will trigger when you hover your mouse over that button. Yeah, in this case a button, over that element. And we assign an event handler again, just the same way we did down here. We had this.handle attribute click. This time I'm calling it this.handle mouse over. Yeah, makes sense. So this, the inline, and the add event listener are just three different ways of adding event listeners and handlers. Yeah, that's all they are. I'm just making you aware of the three different ways. This way we probably won't use too much, but let's just do it for the sake of completeness. Yeah. So I've currently set one up again to when we hover over the innermost box, we're going to change the background color to blue. Yeah. So I still used e.target again, yeah, because that's fine. We can use that. And let's see what happens. So we still got our click event, our purple. Then when I hover over the inner, nothing happened. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, it did happen then. So let's see. That's interesting. So is the click event preventing it? Let's have a look. Is that you, Jamil? How you doing? All right. Oops, I've got to get that. So click, hover. Yeah, okay. I don't know what happened there then to begin with, why it wasn't firing, but it's working now. Right. So we can click and then hover over that one, and it works. Cool. Does it work over that one? Yeah, it does as well. So far we've got two different ways of adding events. Yeah, we've got inline and we've got the DOM property way of assigning it. So far we've needed an on and an on. Yeah, they all start with on. On click, on mouse over, all that sort of stuff. The limitation of this way is we can only assign one event per element. So if we had something else, second, mouse over, we created that. So, which event do you think will happen? We've got two mouse over events set. We've got the handle mouse over and then the second mouse over. Which one's going to work?
The last one.
Both? Okay. And Davide says the last one. Wendy, Lucia, what do you say? One of them. Which one? Which one?
The last one.
The last one? Okay. So let's see. So if it goes blue, then the first one's going. If we get a console log, then the second one's going.
You have
Yeah?
one error.
Oh, I have one error. Thanks, Walter. Where is it?
Second mouse function after the console log at the end, you have one.
Oh, yeah, I'll have the question mark inside. Thank you. Cool. So, hover over. Nothing's happened. If we check the console, which one works? Yeah, so only the second event is triggering. And it's pretty obvious if we look at it, right? Why that's happening. Because it's reassigned, yeah? We've assigned it to a DOM property. That's got a particular name. And then we've reassigned on that same DOM property the second event. So this first event has just simply been overwritten. So that is a limitation. You can only have one handler per event by using the DOM property method. That does not exist. That limitation does not exist for add event listener. We can have as many as we want. Yeah, it sets up a separate event listener, not directly related to a property on that element. It just sets one up. Cool. So, in other words, almost forget about this method now, but I just wanted to let you know it exists and it has some limitations. So, are people aware, by the way, of what I'm doing with get element by ID? We're just querying the DOM, yeah, and returning an actual element. Yeah, so you've got different methods. You've got query selector, things like that. Yeah, so it's just a way of referring to a certain element in the DOM and then doing something to that element. Yeah, or manipulating it in some way, like we're adding background colors, some sort of event handler to do something to that element. Okay. So let's look at the final option, and that's the add event listener option. So I've now put this one on the innermost box. Why not? And what do we want to do to the innermost box? Any ideas? Explode? How would we simulate that, Davide, quickly and easily? I don't know. Do what, sir?
When you click on the innermost,
Yeah.
and change the color with the toolbar.
Oh, come on, Davide.
You could add some text.
Add some text.
Yeah, and the last, and the region.
Okay. So on the handle inner, so let's just look at the syntax first. Yeah. So again, we've got the element. This case, it's the one with the ID of A. So we've already stored that element in a variable called innermost box. We've added an event listener to that element. This time we're using click, not on click. Yes, when we use event listeners, we drop the on. Yeah, mouse over, not on mouse over. And then our second argument is the function or the actual bit of code that we want to run. Yeah, but it's good practice just to assign it to a function, then you can reuse that function again and again. So let's write a handle inner. Just replace this one, I think. And you wanted to add some text. So go on then, how are we going to add some text to our element?
I think with the inner text, property, is it property, attribute?
Do you mean inner HTML or what do you mean?
So you go and get the element and say inner text equals.
So how can I get the element first using the event?
E.target.
E.target at work, yeah. And then what do I want to do to that target?
Inner text equals.
Inner text.
Is it?
Like camel case, like that.
Or inner HTML. Maybe inner HTML.
Oh, in the HTML, I think content. Or content.
Okay,
Oh, fine.
let's try a few different ways. Yeah. And then what do you want to put in there?
Test
Testing anything, right? Yeah. Cool. Let's try that. So this is an on-click event still, right? Yeah. So when I click on the inner, something should happen. E.target.inner text is not a function. Yeah, so I don't think it's inner text.
inner HTML.
Where are we? Inner HTML.
I don't think it's a function. Shouldn't it be passed as a sort of attribute? So like when you pass a value, the same way you've done with the background purple.
I don't see the issue.
Equal and then the value.
Don't think so.
No?
E.target.inner HTML is not a function. I'm forgetting how to write it, to be honest. So
The typical WP school approach for.
yeah.
In HTML,
But does it work for button?
Well, I thought inner text is the one, but it's not working.
Oh, there is inner text as well. Yeah. Okay.
It is.
It is equal instead of the parentheses.
What's that?
Either there's equal text instead of the parentheses. I saw the down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inner text equals.
Yeah. It's a property, not a method. Yeah. Cool. Do you want to try inner text then?
Inner text with a capital T.
Like that. Yep. Okay.
Dot value.
No, should work.
Should be fine without the dot value. Yep, that's changed. Let's just do that again in case you didn't see. Click. Yeah. It's also getting our click event that was defined somewhere else. Yeah.
So I suppose with that way you could also write an article in a box or something. Just
Could write an article
piece
in a
of
box.
text into a section or something.
Yeah. You could have placeholders as well for images or for long bits of text, and then when someone clicks on it, that's revealed to them, or those sorts of things. Yeah, just to make it a bit more exciting than everything being static. Yeah, and there'll be plenty of examples out there of how to use events to make your pages more exciting, and just have a play around with adding some listeners and handlers and writing some functions and see what you can make your page do, really. Yeah. Obviously we've just got really basic examples here, but you get the principle, hopefully at least, the principle's starting to come through. So right at the start then, sorry, any question on that, and then we'll cover just a couple more things, if people have still got any brains left. Yeah, go ahead, Luigi.
Since so far we've been kind of modifying the element that the event was associated with.
Yeah.
Is it possible to modify another element?
I think that question leads on nicely, because why did this one go purple? We didn't assign background purple event to this one. If we have a look at our code, our outermost box had the handle attribute click. Handle attribute click, where are we? I can't even see that now. Oh, here it is, handle attribute click down the bottom. And that's where we changed the target style to purple. Yeah, so why is that innermost box also now going purple?
Kind of inherited, or
Is it kind of inherited? Not.
propagated,
Yeah, that's the key word, right? Propagated. Yeah. So events propagate in the browser. They bubble up the tree, the DOM tree, and then what's the opposite of that? I don't know. They something else on the way back down. They collapse. I forget the key term, but the events scan the DOM. They go up and down it, looking for an event of the same type. So we've got a click event there, and I think we also did a click event for our inner text. Yeah, so they're both click events. So therefore, when you click on one element, it's in effect triggering that event on another one, because that element is contained within it. That was a really long sentence and very confusing, sorry. Key thing to know is that events bubble and they can affect other elements around them. If you don't want that to happen, we have two methods available to us. We have event.prevent default and event.prevent propagation, or stop propagation. So if we didn't want it to go purple, where could we put a stop propagation event?
So I have a question on this one. Do
Yeah.
we want to make it purple?
Let's say we don't want to make the inner one purple. We only want the purple to happen when we click on the outer one. So that's fine. Outer one turns purple.
The first.
But when we click on the inner one, we don't want that to go purple. We just want the text to change.
And we're not going to delete the function.
And we're not going to delete this outer function because we still want that to go purple when we click on it.
The one on top, because if we put on the bottom, it would be less executed, so we
Events sort of bubble up and down, so you just got to be careful of thinking of it in one direction. But we need to put a stop propagation somewhere, and the thing that we want to stop moving on to other elements is the handle attribute click, right? So therefore,
it's the last rule.
the last rule, what do you mean?
The last one.
Now let's just do it, I think, Davide, yeah, and then we'll come back to it if we need. So our event is just E, right? And then stop propagation, like that. Okie doke. Let's try that now. Didn't change anything. Still propagating, event.stop propagation. I think I've spelled it right? Yep. Colon? No. I mean, you should have it right, but it's not going to make a difference. Alright, that's annoying. I have to have a think why that's not working. The only other one then that I wanted to show you quickly was the prevent default, which should be easier to show. An element that has some default behavior is an anchor element, right? What happens when we click on an anchor element?
Goes to a link page or changes in time.
Yeah, it sends you to that link, yeah? Probably complain about that, right? But let's just leave it like that. So if we click on that, then we're on localhost, so that's not gonna work. That's interesting, isn't it? Because we're on a React app. See what it's done? It's just added it to the route. So let's do our target blank, right? Or is it because of
Target blank.
oops. Will that help? I hope so. Okay, well, I'm just going to do the control click for now, right? So you can see when I click on it that a new page opened with the Google in, yeah? So that's our local host. If I control click the link, we get something happen, right? Let's say we want to prevent that default behavior, then we can. Let's do an inline event. So how would I do an inline event? Yeah, let's do an on-click one, yeah, 'cause that's default behavior for links. So we've got it up above, yeah. Yeah. And then, what should we call it? Prevent click, prevent link, something like that. Oops. And why is it complaining again? This, thank you. Nice. And then in prevent link, we can do prevent default, right? Cool. Now hopefully this example will work. Let's see. So we're clicking on the Google, nothing happens. I click as many times as I want, the default behavior of going to a link has been stopped. Often you're not going to need to use these, right? But it's helpful to know they're there if the default behavior of your event needs to be rewritten in any way or overwritten, so you can stop it from doing the default behavior and write your own custom behavior. So network events is probably a good example, Nico, yeah, of where you might want to prevent the defaults and write your own sort of request. Yeah, something like that. Cool, there was one more thing I wanted to mention, but I might just leave it there. Any questions in general, revisiting anything we've talked about? So to summarize, Luigi, do you want to do the usual summary? I can do it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Going back to what I asked before. So, I mean, you mentioned about the propagation, and that applies when there is the same type of event.
Yep.
No.
Yep.
But if I want to determine a behavior whereby, let's say, I affect another element by in a different way, so which doesn't necessarily have that click.
Sure. So therefore you could just do something like getting the element by ID and just make sure it's a different ID to the one that you've clicked on, right? You can access any element in the DOM from any method. So, if we wrap that in a paragraph or something and then gave it an ID of link, yeah, we can change the color of the link by clicking on the outer box or something like that. Yeah, that would be possible. Yeah, so on this .prevent link, we could also, on handle attribute click, right? We could also do let link equals get element by ID, and then give it, what did I say it was, link? Yeah, link. And then you could do anything like link.style dot color, and then add whatever you want. Yeah. So yeah, you don't have to be confined to the element that triggered the event. You can change any element in the DOM that you wish, just as you would usually do. Yeah. Something like that. Excellent. And obviously it's document.getElement.id, yeah, just in case you're wondering why that's an error. Yeah. Alrighty, any other questions?
Google developer tools, they have listed all event listeners.
Google DevTools has got a list of all the event listeners?
Event listeners, forward page, probably DOM.
Oh, sorry, in the...
No, I've seen it.
If you right click and you go to events. Yeah, where's that again, Vilis? Do you remind me?
Can't
Or you don't
remember.
Can't
I
remember.
think Ricardo, someone showed us.
Application, is it?
I was lazy to Google for that, so but it's the right time.
Yeah. Okay, we can look that up, definitely.
When there is the style, you can, I think that what you were referring to, the CSS, if there is some sort of, I don't know,
all event listeners, they're listed somewhere, like you get, I mean, you see everything, and like on click something, so you have 60 event listeners.
Yeah, you can see see how many event listeners you've set.
There's a hidden somewhere, one of those easy to access.
Yep. View event
Global list.
listeners in Chrome.
Next time, I think.
Yeah, we'll find it.
More than a minute, so it's like.
Okay.
Probably there's 2 more links.
Yep. Anything else, guys? Okay, I'll do the usual. I'll give you the code. I will post those links, stuff like that. No worries.